joyful sound, a joyful noise forevermore echoes here above.
My name is Nnadozie Jeffrey Ogbonnaya. I was born in Nigeria, but moved to the United States at 6 months old, and I'm 15 years old. I currently live in Lincoln, Nebraska. I started reading books when I was probably before I was even one. I think my favorite book from the imagination library was The Little Engine That Could. It was a little fantasy children's book about a train delivering goods to little kids through a lot of different hard situations, and it would always tell itself that it could and that it could get there. So that was one of my favorite childhood books. Of course, I love to read, and I've been reading since I was very little. But aside from reading, I enjoy watching movies, watching TV, playing video games, cooking, baking, hanging out with my siblings, and hanging out with my friends. I took the pre-SAT as a 4th grader, and I scored very high in reading and writing. So getting that medal, to me, it was very validating because I knew I had the interest and the passion for writing, but it also kind of told me that I had the skills there too. And because the pre-SAT, I took it as a 4th grader, but the test is really meant for 8th and 9th graders, so early high schoolers. So scoring that high in a standardized test like that was really validating for me. The process of starting my first book, initially it wasn't intended to be something that I did to publish it or for money or anything. It was just for me to be creative and kind of write something, use my own ideas to create something that I was proud of. But as my parents and some of my teachers heard about me starting writing, some of them suggested that I should try and get it published, and the idea became more appealing to me. And so by the December of 2020, my first book was published. My story follows 5 children initially, and all of them go to the same school, and they are called upon by a race of aliens from outside the galaxy to help them fight a war against basically evil aliens in the galaxy, and they're given superpowers in order to help with that struggle. I think what inspired me was reading a lot of fantasy authors that had children as main subjects in the book, and kind of painting children as independent and worthy of a story. And I liked the concept of superheroes and children being the focus, so that inspired me to just write something along those lines. In my writing, it's not necessarily an overt thing in the book, but just the fact that my book has a lot of characters from different backgrounds. Some characters are white, some characters are Hispanic, some are Black, some are Asian, some are aliens even. So we have a lot of different backgrounds and experiences represented in my book, and I think just the fact that they're there helps people to relate to that. I started playing piano at 5 when I was in kindergarten. My dad, he had a small keyboard that he would sometimes play around the house. And of course, I was familiar with the instrument through hearing it in music and seeing it at church. So it wasn't necessarily a super new experience when I started, but I wanted to kind of enjoy it for myself when I started, and I have enjoyed it ever since. As for the violin, I started the violin in 4th grade. It was a school program where they would basically teach us instruments, and I selected the violin because I'd heard it before and I thought it was interesting. With the Lincoln Youth Symphony, one of my favorite things is just the fact that there are so many talented musicians, young musicians there. I think there's about 90 students across Lincoln that we all come together on Tuesdays to rehearse, and all of them are incredibly skilled, and it's really enjoyable working with all of them to make music. But also another experience from the Youth Symphony is playing with the Lincoln Symphony, which is our adult symphony that plays for our city at our concert hall. So we got to play with them on stage one weekend, and it was really an amazing experience. In terms of leadership, I think the most important thing I learned was making sure you pay attention to what is really important to someone else. We called them hot button topics in our class, but essentially it's the subjects and things that will make the person you're talking to perk up and be like, oh, I know that, or oh yeah, I really enjoy that. And it gets them to talk and relate more to you and be more engaged in what you're doing. I would tell them, and honestly, this is really me talking to my past self, but even when it's really hard to practice or to get your words down onto paper or onto a screen, I think really stick with it, because you really never know what opportunities it can bring you later in life, as long as you're consistent and deliberate with using your talents.